Hi, everyone. Thank you for tuning in to my series, Yes.AI. I noticed some of you have been trying to click that link. Don't do it. It was just me trying to be clever. And all I've done is confuse people. So if you want to, tune in to any of these events, you have to go to the event page on LinkedIn and just RSVP just so that you can get connected. And the first episode's up. It ended up just being me. So if you don't mind hearing one person talk for 40 minutes straight, go for it. But today I'm meeting with Kyle Harbaugh at Chief Go Officers, and why we're talking today is because Kyle does a lot of work with law firms and small business owners, kind of helping them streamline processes so that they could find time to innovate and just build their business. And so we're going to spend some time just talking about how we can be using AI technology even now, to streamline some of our processes as business owners. And so, Kyle, if you can just like introduce yourself briefly, we'll just get into these hot questions.
Perfect. Hi, everyone. Kyle Harbaugh with Chief Go Officers. We're a management consulting firm that helps professional services grow and operate better. I've worked in law firms for almost 15 years, and I really love lawyers. And so I know that business model really well. That's who I primarily help, but we also help other service based businesses. And one of the things how we help people is with AI. We started doing everything by hand initially in our practice, and we started then using AI at the beginning just for our own purposes, and then we saw the tremendous advantage that it has and they can offer, and we wanted to bring that to our clients. So now we've developed two AI systems from the ground up, and we love helping people do more with AI.
No, that sounds really good. There's so much negativity, I feel, every time I'm on LinkedIn. Like I think I see, 10 negative LinkedIn posts for every one, semi-positive post towards AI. And but then like when you look at, like the commercial aspect of AI technology, I found that like all of the companies that are kind of like running AI technology right now, their big hoopla is, oh, we're gonna help you kind of like get rid of needing that many people on your teams. Like that seems to be the push for most I feel like AI technologists right now that are kind of promoting their stuff. Like that seems to be the number one thing that they're saying is, oh, we'll help you. It's not just, oh, we'll save time. It's, oh, if you use my technology, eventually you won't need as many people on your team. And so like that that's something for me that's like problematic, because the idea that we're like essentially like creating a way to eliminate people from the workforce without providing something different, for them to do. To me, that's like a huge problem, and creates like a huge amount of disparity. But we're
Mm-hmm.
not gonna get into that because we could spend like 5,000 years on that. What I really, what I really want you to talk about is, and I'm mixing up the questions a little bit here, but how can we use it as a cost saving tool while also like looking at the long-term value of driving innovation and generating new revenue streams, because I think this is a much better way of looking at the technology rather than just kind of like, oh, we're eliminating people. So
Yeah, and while I definitely think that AI is here to supercharge you, allow you to do more in less time. That's definitely been the case for us and our clients.
mhm,
But at the same time, there's still a lot of work that needs to be done by a human,
mhm,
and there still needs to be a human in that loop so that there's I kind of look at humans as being like the quality control.
Mm-hmm.
So it's very valuable to have somebody who knows what the output should be and understand, oh, that's where something went wrong or it got confused, and know how to work with AI. So
Mm-hmm.
I see a lot of people who are working now who maybe are very experienced. They still have a role to play,
Mm-hmm.
but it might be learning a bit about AI and how to work with it, how to use it so that you can, better, do your work and get more work done.
Mm-hmm. No, that makes sense. I mean, we were on a live recently, and I talked about how I use the technology that was available to me to kind of streamline my processes so that I could, achieve the goals that I had for myself, right? And so, one of the things I did when I was working for a large organization was every time there was some new technology available and they needed people to pilot it, that was something I did. Because I felt like, okay, free training, on this like, state of the art, avant garde, technology. And I'm getting paid to do that. Like, that just seemed like a no brainer for me. And
Yeah.
so, like, what kind of advice would you give to business owners, even and even business owners that kind of like have larger teams, like what kind of advice would you give to those, larger organizations that are maybe thinking about AI implementation, and how, how they could like do so in a way that isn't jarring to their team, to the people that have been kind of like helping them make money up until this point.
Sure, sure. I think a great way to implement something quick and easy right now is an AI note taker. So when
Mm-hmm.
you have your meetings, your AI note takers there, it's no longer like your secretary taking notes. It's this AI note taker, and the nice thing is it can identify things you need to follow up on.
Mm-hmm.
So it'll give you a summary, but it can also give you a full transcript, and you can
Mm-hmm.
search in a lot
Mm-hmm.
of these where you can say, oh, I know we talked about this issue, and you can search a keyword related to that issue, and then it'll tell you where that pops up in the interview or in
Mm-hmm.
the discussion.
Right.
So that can be really really valuable, and it can even take the meeting notes, and if you're using something like, say, Slack, you can
Mhm.
have that meeting pushed out to other people on the team who maybe weren't in the call, but
Mm.
will have it, find that useful. So it can be really helpful to have, more communication, get more communication out, and people are hearing it, like they were there because it's
Mhm.
an audio recording.
Oh no, that's really awesome. And so like what I've seen is like I've actually seen note takers that also do like an actual like written transcript as well.
Hmm.
And so for me, I don't know. Like I'm more likely to read a book than I am to watch a video about a topic. That's just how I am.
Hmm.
I like it's terrible because I'm doing a live podcast right now, but I'm also more likely to read a book than listen to a podcast. Um, because that's just how I retain information the best that way. And so for me, what I love about like the AI note taker is the ability, even like, kind of like my most recent note taking experience would have been in a law firm as when I was a junior associate, so like I remember like being the note taker on those
Hmm.
calls,
Hmm.
and being a note taker, seems like a very unimportant job, but being a note taker um is about, at the time it was like $500 an hour to have me to have me take those and for me, like a benefit that I kind of brought to the table was I have a photographic memory, so like
Mm.
it may not all get into like the actual physical notes, but if we have a conversation about it, I'll like have like, because to me it's like, how long do you want the notes to be? So like
Right.
high level note taking, but also being able to say, oh, the reason we have this bullet point is because of XYZ, right? And so I love the idea of using AI technology now to do that for you. Like you said, like, those moments where you might need to follow up on something, right? Where, there was like, you spent 10 minutes talking about something very specific, like, okay, this is probably like in a 30-minute call, that's probably going to be one of the more important things that you need to kind of prioritize getting back to a client on, right?
Right.
Versus, the thing you spent 30 seconds on. And so I love the idea of being able to do that. And I think, to me, that's an appropriate form of cost saving, because now your client doesn't have to worry that they're paying. I remember when we were doing Zooms. It's one thing when you're doing a just an audio conference call and nobody knows how many people are in the room, but there's something jarring about being, the client. And I've been that client where I like show up for a meeting now as a business owner, and like I see like three to five people on the call. And I'm like,
Mhm.
like, I've played this game. I don't need to,
Yeah. Like, oh man,
um,
I'm getting a bill. This
right?
is going to be an expensive call.
And I remember like some clients would actually like voice it because like they didn't care, like they just felt like whatever, they, when I was an attorney, when I was like practicing full time. And so, what how I like, one thing I think comes into play now is if we're using this AI technology in these calls, right, where there's supposed to be like privacy, there's supposed to be attorney client privilege in these calls, like, and maybe that's a question for the lawyer I'm like talking to in a couple of weeks. But is that something that like is being considered, you feel like, by the law firms that you're working with, when they're thinking about, okay, I'm going to implement the use of a certain technology? Is this one of their worries? And like, how are they combating that worry of, privacy and sensitive data and that kind of thing?
Yeah, some are thinking about it and others are not. Um, I have the systems that we have built are SOC 2 GDPR compliant.
Mm-hmm.
We built them not only for law firms but for financial firms as well. We
Mm-hmm.
work with a lot of financial advisors and CPA firms.
Mm-hmm.
So those are other people that need that level of compliance. Um, some are dialed into the privacy aspects.
Mm-hmm.
Others are not. You know, like you don't know what you don't know,
Mm-hmm.
and that's another thing we'll talk about later on in another context. But if you don't know about the data privacy or guardrails that are in place on certain systems, um, like things perform very differently, or who gets the information, how the
Mm-hmm.
model is trained, all this and that. Like they might be training on your data,
Mm.
and the AI model itself might be training on your data. And so it's really important to read the terms of service, to read all the fine print. The other thing is understand like what the tool was made for. If it's made for the masses, that might not be there, and
Mhm.
and it might be a slower, more clunky type of system to use. But part of that slowness is because it's going through and maybe double, triple checking it in a layered manner, so
Mhm.
that it's providing a more accurate answer
Right.
that is been cross referenced.
Mhm.
So it's important to understand what you're using, who it was made for, what it's supposed to do, what it's not supposed to do. It's kind of like using a screwdriver for a job that you probably be better using a hammer. You might be able to get it done, but it
Mhm.
might not be a very good use of that tool.
No, that totally makes sense. And so, how are you helping law firms and businesses make faster and smarter decisions by integrating AI in their kind of day-to-day operations? What are some of the things that, you're helping them do right now?
Yeah, so there's two areas that law firm owners are really up against. One is the talent. They have to get the
Mm-hmm.
right talent and the right roles, and hiring was something that pretty much across the board, anybody we worked with said that they had hiring struggles.
Hmm.
And a lot of times I would say they were coming to me because they were like, well, we want to become more efficient.
Yeah.
And I'd say, well, you're doing 3, 4 different roles. You're wearing, you're an attorney, but you're also doing HR, you're also doing accounting, you're doing all these things for your firm. How about you delegate some of that?
Hmm.
Okay, yeah, that sounds about right. And then I'd say, like, well, have you thought about working with a recruiter? We definitely don't want to do that. Recruiters are expensive. We haven't had a good experience. A few different objections to working with a recruiter.
Mm-hmm.
I get that. At the same time, a recruiter, that's all they do is they find people who are going to
Mm-hmm.
fit really well. And you don't know how to hire consistently. Like, you've already admitted that
Like you
people.
failed. You've
Yeah,
already failed.
right. People have, people told me, I heard this one, horror story where somebody hired somebody that was a lawyer, and they didn't do a great job. They didn't
Mm.
follow up on the things they needed to follow up on, and it turned into a huge mess. They ended up having to fire that person, deal with ethics complaints. Another person quit because they didn't want that workload to shift to their
Mm.
workload. And so it can really snowball out of control if you make a wrong hire. And so
Mm.
um, what we decided to do is we help with recruitment. We have a
Mm-hmm.
framework that is very, very effective. And we built that into an AI. So now
Mm-hmm.
our clients can work with our right hire system, and they can get a data-driven decision about a candidate, and they can make a hiring decision in 24 hours. We give them a detailed report that explains why this person is the best fit and why we should hire them. And it's not just based on skills and experience.
Mm.
That's part of it, but it's also looking at things from a personality and culture fit, and from a personal goals and long-term developmental opportunities within the firm. Because you might have a great culture fit, you might have all the skills you need in a candidate, but if they want to be partner in 3 years and that's never going to happen at your firm, they're not going to stay long term. They're going
Yeah.
to move on.
Mm-hmm. No, that totally makes sense. And so it sounds like you guys are like trying to kind of bridge this gap between, you know, this alleged lack of good talent and really trying to like streamline the process so that, we're looking not just at kind of surface level information, but also kind of getting into the nitty gritty, finer details of
Right.
what a firm may be looking for. And
Right.
so, what are, I guess, I have a follow up question on that.
Go ahead.
And so my question about that is, when looking for a culture fit, are you looking at like the culture as it is now or the culture as it is evolving, like are and does it matter, is this something the client kind of like gives you bullet points of what they're looking for specifically, and then you kind of like implement that using your technology, or is it just kind of like a baseline culture?
So we can go pretty deep on any of these
Mm-hmm.
topics. It's really what the client wants to provide, but in
Mm-hmm.
the profile, so there's really 3 profiles they have to fill out. They're short
Mm-hmm.
little questionnaires, but basically they got to tell us about their business. They have to tell us about the business unit that they're
Mm-hmm.
going into. So, say for instance, this person's going to be some kind of accounting person. They're going to serve in an accounting role within the firm. So
Mm-hmm.
they're going to need to tell us about that specific department,
Okay.
and then the role itself.
Mm.
And one of the things we ask about for the company as a whole is, what's your mission, your vision, your values. So we can find other people who are aligned with those values. So that's one of the ways we look at it. We're looking at it from both the candidate side and also the company side. So one of the ways we're assessing personality fit is their personality assessment, and really anything else we can get our hands on. So our system will look at interview notes. It'll look at any kind of notes you can provide. So maybe your pre-screening, like your initial call, your like little 15-minute vibe check. That it can look at those notes. It can look at the notes that you take in the formal interview and the second round interview. Really anything you can throw at it. So it could be we could look at background checks or like I said, personality profiles. Anything we can provide the system to give it more insight.
Okay. No, that sounds good. And so do you find yourself doing it more, like, do you have as part of your system where an applicant would like input information into your system as well, or just from the client
Yeah,
or
it's just
company side?
the hiring decision maker, and this is just more information. Obviously, it's not making a decision for you. It's you're still in the driver's seat, but you have information to base it off of than just your gut feeling. And looking at all this information would be time consuming.
Yeah.
Some of those personality profiles are very, very detailed. And like I said before, that might not be really your forte. And so it's a way to process a lot of information very, very quickly. And I think that is a really good way to use AI as kind of a broad overview in any system is take manual tasks that are time consuming, fatiguing, and give it to if you can train a robot to do it, and it just does it without getting tired, then you're freed up to be more creative, to focus on other things. And so yeah, could you do this this analysis by hand? You certainly could, but it's going to take a while. And you don't want to you want your hiring process to be quick so you can make an offer quickly, because a lot of times those really good people, they're going to have another offer in hand very soon. There's probably multiple people they're interviewing with. So the sooner you can follow up with them with an offer that's compelling to them, the better. So
Yeah.
there's a real advantage there to getting back quickly. And I know a lot of firms, their hiring process is not quick.
No, like especially right now where the market is not like particularly great. People can be like going through the process for like 4 to 6 weeks. I mean, I've heard of people like, getting like 20 rounds, going to, and for me, like 20 rounds of interview and not getting a job offer on the end is for me just like absolute nonsense. Because I don't think you need that many meetings to know you don't want somebody working with you. Like it's not that hard. But I also, had a unique position of like hiring, kind of like recruiting, hiring, and developing people for retail chain stores as early as like 18 years old. And so maybe I just have a different way about, going through like interview process. But to me, it's like, even, I think even the attitude of, oh, if somebody isn't working right now, like they're not a good candidate, to me is absolutely ridiculous. Because it's like, do you need an employee, or are you just trying to poach somebody from another person so they don't have them, right? And so I think that comes into play as well. But I won't get into it because like I feel like I'll like end up ranting, and we won't talk about AI technology, which is why we're here. And
That's
so
right.
and so my next question for you is really in what ways, can AI help close, some of the like skill gaps that,
Right.
teams might have, and actually empower employees to be more efficient, and be confident in their roles?
Yeah, great question. So, I mean, just to go back to like the right hire example, like you might be a hiring decision maker, and some people on your team are saying, oh, hire this person, and other people are saying, oh, this one's really actually the best. And
Mm-hmm.
so this is another way to have some more information to say, well, I only have one role. Some people are saying this person, other people are saying that person. I'm basing my decision on actual data from
Mm-hmm.
this objective report. The Another good example would be communications. So you can have, I mean, it may not even be AI, but just automations set up to, communicate with the client regularly, or, review contracts more quickly, or there's a variety of ways. Actually, one of the tools that I was really blown away by somewhat recently is I worked in the personal injury space for a while,
Mm-hmm.
and there's systems out there that are very, very good, that will create a medical chronology based on all the records. It'll give footnotes so you can jump to those key pages,
Mm-hmm.
because sometimes you have somebody who's in a hospital for, say, a week. They're very badly injured. There's maybe only 3 to 5 pages you really need, but those are key. But because they were in the hospital a week, you might have a stack this
Mm-hmm.
tall that you got to go through and sort through and figure out what's important and what's not. And so, something like that tool, it really speeds things up. And the tool I'm thinking of, it actually not only told you, it not only summarized the medical records and gave you footnotes, but it actually told you points of negotiation. So
Mm-hmm.
things that the other side might bring up, things that you probably should bring up. And that's really helpful. That really gets to um, accuracy. So
Mm-hmm.
you're properly valuing your matter. And
Yeah.
all, because I've been in so many negotiations where one side, either I didn't know something or the other side didn't know something, and it totally changed the value of the case, because
Mm.
there was something uncovered that was not known by one of the parties, and
Right.
then it made us reevaluate everything.
Mm-hmm.
And so that can be so important to save time, and also save face in front of
Mm-hmm.
your opponent. So
Yeah.
there's so many good reasons to use AI, and there's a lot of really helpful tools, if you take the time to learn them, and make sure they're good for your use case.
Mm-hmm. So, I actually I wanna kind of stir the pot a little bit, because
Okay.
you said before, that looking at the data that's presented to you is going to be more objective.
Hmm.
But there have been so much material written just in the last year alone, actually, including a couple like books, which I'm going to plug them because because I love the book so much. And so the first book I'm thinking of is the AI Con, and it just talks about kind of high level, this idea that like there are either people on the AI is everything, AI first. We love technology, boo people. And then on the flip side, you have, the people who are like, AI is the devil. Like, don't implement it. Like, it's bad. It's just bad for everyone. Like, and kind of like dooming and glooming it in a way that's like, it's so hyperbolic, like, and I will admit, like, on both sides, incredibly hyperbolic, because on the one hand you have AI saving the universe, and on the other hand AI completely, like, catapulting us to Armageddon level types of life, right? And I like to think of myself as somebody who's like very much on the middle about a lot of things, because for me it's like, if we really look at life, like, all the growth happens in the middle. Like, it's never, to me, like, and long-term growth, sustainable growth happens in the middle. I think
Yeah,
I
I would
think
agree.
when we're extreme in either end, then it becomes problematic. Which is funny because I like to think of myself as a black and white person too, but some things are just black and white. And so let me get to my
Definitely.
question. And so, one of the concerns, that the AI Con, Empire of AI, is another book. And literally, like, I've read like hundreds of articles in just like the last year alone, including catching up from
Mm,
stuff that was written before. And one key concern seems to be just the inherent bias in a lot of the technology because of the limited cross section of people actually working to develop these technologies, right? Um,
okay.
and so, like, this question might just be like a question that, and just to be fair to you, Kyle, because like you're not like,
No, no, I know where you're going with this, or I think I know where you're going with this, and
yeah,
I'm welcoming this question. I like this
yeah,
question.
and so how, I guess, and I guess why we're talking today is because I know you have this personal inherent idea about human, kind of the human touch
Mhm.
in every aspect of AI technology's
Right.
use, which I think is really important to note. And so how can the people that are using the AI technology kind of guard for, potential biases,
Yes.
also having like self-awareness about their own confirmation bias. Cause like,
Right.
I like, to me, like, I like to think I'm like the best person in the whole world, but, you know, if I find something that confirms my ill-advised, preconceived ideas, I'm probably going to run with it unless I find something relatively quickly to kind of rebut whatever it is I found, right? And so,
Yeah. No, I get it, and I'm a big fan of like human in the loop
mhm,
systems, where AI is there to supercharge us, but at
mhm,
the end of the day, we're still making the decisions. We just
mhm,
have an enhanced perspective. I think one of the things that is really important that is not talked about very much in the AI sphere is the worldview that's
mhm,
being poured into the system. The underlying philosophy and
mhm,
psychology that's being given to the system and how it's trained. And a lot of these systems are black box. We don't know how it's coming up with
mhm,
the output. We can kind of reverse engineer and
right,
play with the systems to understand how it reasons and how it thinks and works out different problems, but
mhm,
we don't fully really know because it's somebody else's system. So
mhm,
what I'll say is, um, you need to understand how these things work and how they can different philosophies and worldviews play into the systems. And the other thing that is really important is what they're trained on. So
mhm,
um, they're not smart systems in that they're just pulling uh, data from here. Excuse me. We got to back up just a second. So LLMs, largely what they do, large language models, is they're a the text I can't, I'm blanking on the name all of a sudden, but like when you're texting on your phone, it anticipates the next word you're going to say. So it's
mhm,
it's a predictor. it's a
mhm,
it's a giant predictor, just like that system on your phone, but it's much bigger, and it's
mhm,
pulling from the entire data of the internet.
mhm,
So it can come up with a lot of weird things, and that's partially why there's a lot of concerns about it hallucinating.
mhm,
Well, if you have it trained on smaller sets of data that are more curated, that are vetted, that say all the data that this thing is trained on is really highly regarded. These are the
mhm,
best of the best experts, or this is trained on all of our contracts written by
mhm,
this person who's got all this experience, who's very highly regarded in the industry. Um, that system is going to be more accurate because it's not pulling from this gigantic, corpus of information. It's pulling from
mhm,
a much more tailored,
yeah,
curated set of data. And so it's really important to understand what it believes and what it's been trained on. and because that's going to influence how it answers things.
Mm-hmm. And so I'm gonna mess with you a little bit
Hmm.
because one, can a machine believe? You know,
Yeah, if you
can
tell it
it
to, if you
can
tell
it
it to,
can a but is it believing or is it simply regurgitating what it's been told? Right? Is it simply just like reprocessing what it's been trained to do, right? And
yeah,
and more importantly, what it's been developed to do, right?
right.
And so even and the reason why I'm saying that is because I have to be the objective voice here, because I don't know, Kyle. I feel like you've drunk some of the AI Kool-Aid. So I gotta I gotta bring you back. I gotta bring you back a little bit. And
Yeah.
that's fine because I've definitely drunk it myself, and how I keep myself in check is by continually reading up on
Yeah.
the materials, because I've kind of told my family this, like, it's easy for me. I'm easily seduced by technology because
Mm.
you know, I'm the type of person where, like, I want to be done fast,
Yeah, I get that.
you know? And so
Hmm.
because I know that about myself, I'm always like putting guardrails on
Hmm.
myself
Yeah, and
because
I
because
agree. I agree.
because
Yeah.
if I don't, like, I would be the, like, AI is going to save the universe type of person and get really like tunnel vision about it. And I'm not saying that that's what you are, because I definitely don't think that that's the case. But something that Howe says in The Empire of AI is this idea that these machines are anthropomorphic,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
That
Hmm.
they're able to you know do things that humans can do. Is almost like trying so hard to get like a machine to be human, that you're willing to kind of do whatever it takes, whether it means keeping things in a black box so people don't have like a full view of what's really going on, right? So
Right.
it's easy for me to think, oh, this large language model is doing all of this on its own, but you know anybody who's kind of like spent enough time on this technology knows that, like, well, if that's the case, then why are there people in the data centers checking it and making sure things are going well, right? And then take it further, then why are there people that are being disparaged kind of in lesser economies right now, where they're being paid pennies on the dollar to actually find potential issues, right? And so going
Hmm.
back to this idea of, yes, there needs to be a human aspect, but even the quality of the human doing the work, and quality here to me actually is in the onus of the companies that are developing the machine. So it's like, you've heard the term, you get what you pay for, right?
Yeah, sure.
And so it's like, if you're paying, Bob $2 an hour to find potential errors in your technology, is Bob going to do as good a job as somebody who's being paid $10 an hour or $20 an hour, right? Probably not.
Possibly, but possibly because I mean, maybe they're not working for there's other internal motivators beyond the money. Like there's pride of work. There's there's other things that can motivate him. Maybe he wants to really impress him because he doesn't want to stay there, and he wants to get a higher level position, and so he's doing really great work because he wants to climb the ladder.
I mean,
um,
I use Bob instead of like an ethnic name
yeah,
because we're in the US right now
sure.
having this conversation, but like, we have not been really good to people outside of the US when it
I
comes
I
to
I I hear you. Yeah,
with the
I would.
development of our technology. And so to me, that's
Right.
something I think, like, even as business owners, you want to be aware of how you're fitting into this larger,
Yeah.
economic model.
Yeah.
um
Definitely.
I think we're in I think in 1995 we could pretend, right? We could like I didn't know right away when my sneakers were like being made, in
Right.
the Philippines somewhere. Like I didn't
Right.
know and kind of what that looked like, right? But now as somebody who has like grown up and kind of seen, just how the world works, like it behooves me as somebody who is not just a citizen of the United States but of the world to
Mm.
care about the world that I don't see, because I want the world that doesn't see me to care about me too. Kind
Right.
of on this very like base level.
Yeah.
And for me, like it just takes the motivation, I think, out of um having to be so fast, because now you're thinking about, okay, how is this decision really impacting the people that are closest to it, the people that are working on the technology on a daily basis, not like looking as much at the input, right, the sacrifices that are
Mhm.
being made to make it happen, as much as we look at the output. Because I think that's for me anyway, that's the thing that seems to get lost, is kind of what had to happen for the output to
Yeah.
come, right?
Yeah.
And so like this is like a very like challenging way to like but part of the reason I'm talking about these things is because I'm really trying to like tee it up for the next episode, where we're going to really talk about the ethics that comes out of it,
Mhm.
because I agree with you. Like I think everybody should be using some form of AI technology right now. Like you don't have to be the best at it, but you need you need to be familiar.
Yeah.
And I agree with your points, like the points that you made about, you know, as this technology is being implemented in a business, like even if your business decides it's going to be AI first, which we didn't even get into that, um, but even if your business is like, you're going to need people who understand how the technology works, who are willing to kind of do these checks and balances that we're
Yeah.
talking about, right? Kind of like checking our own bias, but also checking the bias from the product that we're receiving from the technology as well, and kind of being aware of all of the systems in place, which we can't expect the machines to check themselves.
I mean, no, you cannot, but you can build checks and balances
Mm-hmm.
where one is checking the other's work. I think
Mm-hmm.
that now there's some really interesting I've seen some really interesting things where different AIs are interacting with each other,
Mm-hmm.
and anyways. The point is, um, that type of work can be done, and I think it really it highlights an important piece that you need to not just blindly follow these things, but understand and read it, read the outputs, read the terms of service, know how data is being handled, and one way to really make sure you get a consistent product is custom, go custom.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
like, yeah, you're using, there's plenty of off the shelf things that we can buy. You can also build your own server, download your own AI, train it on your own stuff, and have it internal, private. It's for your use only. You own it. It doesn't change with some new software update or something like
Mm-hmm.
that. So there's lots of different options out there, and it just depends on what you need it to do. But I think it's here to enhance our lives overall,
Mm-hmm.
do more of the work we enjoy doing and do less of the boring stuff we don't like doing.
Mm-hmm.
Um, overall, I think it's a good thing, but I also do get the concerns for sure, and it's overwhelming. I mean, it's changing all the time. There's new tools coming out all the time, and then there's all sorts of regulations being
Mm-hmm.
put forth. So it's moving very fast, but you need to stay up on it if you want to have a competitive edge.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And so thank you so much, Kyle,
My
for
pleasure.
taking the time this afternoon to just kind of bounce these ideas off with me and answer some of my questions. For those of you who don't know Kyle, follow him on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
Follow Chief Go Officers. He's always got some good stuff. He has like an awesome newsletter that I sometimes try to read. So I'm plugging him, and you guys know I have like 18 newsletters on LinkedIn. So if I have time to read Kyle's, it's good. And so thank you everyone for tuning in. Thank you, Kyle, and tune in 2 weeks to hear more about like AI policy, ethics, and see how I challenge the attorney in the room.
I'm looking forward to that conversation.
All
And
right.
thank you so much, Aubria, for having me here. I really appreciate it. It's been fun.
Thank you.